This Bonfire Side Chat Appendix is supported by the listeners, just like every episode of every show on Duckfeed.tv. To find out how you can support this show and others, go to patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv. A couple of bucks a month goes a long way and gets you some cool stuff. Once again, that is patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfire Side Chat. It is a hunter's favorite.
Yes, and this week we are reading your responses to Central Yharnam, the first part. We are no longer joined by Vati. He had to leave. We decided to record this after that session and without him, just because he was kind enough to stay awake very late for us. We really appreciated him coming on the show.
He's a very busy guy, and the time difference makes it difficult to demand like 2.5 hours of his time versus 90 minutes of it. But we really appreciate having him on, and hopefully you guys also hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, he was great. Yeah. And I was very happy to have him on because I'm a great admirer of his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was some, let's say, lack of clarity around the release schedule. We've had a lot of new people show up and introduce themselves and say, "Hey guys, I've just now heard about your show and listened to you because of Bloodborne." First off, welcome. Thank you so much for letting us know that you're here. The numbers show that there's a lot of you, and so I want to kind of like reiterate and answer the question: why are you not seeing a regular episode right now?
Yes, yeah. So what we do, because we do a lot of shows on the network. A weekly schedule was never going to be tenable for this show or for our other flagship show. So we came up with things to do in the off weeks. And so real kind of mainline episodes happen every other week. In the off weeks, we do these appendix episodes, which are there to, to let us kind of participate with you guys, because we are interested in what you guys have to say about the areas that we talk about. And then also to kind of run corrections and just kind of off-topic things, deleted scenes and stuff like that. So consider them to be a bonus. They're the chalice dungeons of this podcast. They're not the main meat of it. Yeah. I think we do have people who listen who aren't really interested in these, who just listen every other week, and that's fine too. Yeah. But it is untenable for us to do an episode every week.
Yeah.
So we don't.
So when you see an appendix, that means that it's one of these. It is the Chalice episode. Regardless, something will always go out on the feed. Sunday afternoons, usually the afternoon Eastern time. So use that as a guide. If something hasn't shown up by the evening on Sunday, something has gone wrong. But the mainline episodes, the mainline episodes about new areas with new guests and such happen every other week.
Yes, and if you want to participate in these as we read other people's responses, there's a couple of different ways to do that. If you head on over to duckfeed.tv/contact, it's probably the preferred method. We'll read your responses on air. And then if you join us at facebook.com/bonfireside chat, we'll talk to you there as well.
And people who have responded this week have been much better about it, but just general guidelines. Keep it punchy, keep it snappy. Understand that we may not be able to use your response, but it is held on to in case there's a light week for it. Sometimes we will edit them and also try and stay away from, man, this is a cool game and a cool area. We're generally we're looking for kind of different, unique, fresh insights.
Yeah, and we mostly because we covered that.
Yes,
we talked about that kind of stuff, and Facebook is a great place for that. So if you just want to kind of gush, there's a large community of people who share links, cool screenshots and stuff like that. That is a cool place to do that.
A cool place for dudes and ladies.
And ladies, it's a cool place for any number of genders. So we'll get started here with just a little bit of follow-up. Sharon by Contact says, the closed door in the Cathedral Ward secret is not that big of a secret. You apparently need high insight to open the door and not much else.
Yeah.
Which one are we talking about? Is that the one that
the one behind the cleric beast?
I didn't think that opens. I'm pretty sure it doesn't because I put in a thing in the show notes where Illusory Wall tested where it went.
Did he? Did he test it with insight?
He tested it because I thought it was kind of a well-known like former shortcut.
Okay.
I wonder if Sharon is referring, because she says in the cathedral ward, which makes me think that maybe she's talking about the door that just opens seemingly after the Bloodstarved Beast.
Okay.
I wonder if she's talking about the one after the Cleric Beast or not, because I thought that was a shortcut that was not implemented and was tested.
Okay. Huh.
So that's why, I mean, I could be wrong about that. I didn't think it was insight though. I thought that was based on the fact that it has been tested by Illusory put like a bunch of coins that kind of clip through the wall.
Yeah.
And then does a video where he runs over to the other side of the door. And it's down at the end of a hallway where you get a treasure that's in the cathedral ward that leads to.
Yeah. We spoke about that on the main episode. I did some Google searching around this to fact check it, and I wasn't able to find anything, so I didn't know if we were getting a scoop or not.
I don't know. I don't mean to discount Sharon. I could be wrong about it. I do put a lot of trust in Illusory, just because he's very diligent. But you could be right. It's just that's not my current understanding. I've been wrong before.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we will leave this to further testing. I wasn't able to get to that before we recorded.
Yeah, that will be a question mark.
Yeah. Let's see here. Morty Peshkes. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Via comment writes in to say, I think the crows were once regular crows who feasted on the dead of Yharnam. Now, considering those bodies, well, most of them were infected, and it's not too far-fetched to assume that their blood and meat also changed the crows to the state that they are in now. If you notice, the crows are very bloated and move in a sluggish manner, much like when you would overeat. If you use the monocular, you can see pieces of meat hanging from their beaks. This is in reference to some of our questioning of the provenance of the crows that you begin to encounter in Central Yharnam.
Yeah, I don't remember saying anything that directly contradicted this. I thought they moved like hurt birds.
Yeah,
but I didn't think they were actually injured.
Yeah,
they reminded me of the way I've seen birds move when they're injured.
Yeah, I remember I mentioned they're feasting on flesh, so they move weird. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that is good. Good thought. So yeah, thank you, Morty.
What I will say, so that one comes in via comment. We have the blog up there for like on the website for people to see those. You can put a comment in. I moderate those, like if they come through, just to stop drive-bys. So if it takes a little bit for those to pop on, it's because I haven't seen it yet. But that is another way to get stuff there.
Yeah, and some things I don't always even check that. I don't get notifications of those. So every once in a while, I'll be flipping through them just kind of randomly and find something like addressed to me, like when Gary said this. Oh, I was like, oh shit. So if it's not because we're ignoring you if that happens, it's just because of because it is something that we don't check automatically because we don't get a lot of comments through that forum. So about the coffin, Noah says via Facebook, I disagree with Gary when he says there's no stated lore reason for the coffins in Central Yharnam to have chains around them. Whenever you die, you are sent back to the hunter's dream and then awaken anew. I think you are tied to the dream because of your hunter's mark and able to come back from death time and again. I think the early villagers or some other organized force responded to hunters coming back to life by trying to trap their bodies inside these coffins, not really understanding the implications of the hunter's curse. So all they are left with is empty coffins. Or are they? Schrodinger's coffins? The ones you can break are empty always anyway.
Yeah.
The first part of that, that is what's happening with hunters. I read this. I actually responded to you on Facebook, Noah, but I did it right before we started recording the session. It rubs me the wrong way, the idea that these are all just full of hunters.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hunters. And like there are a lot of hunters. The people you run into are hunters. Yep. Like the hollows essentially. But that just doesn't feel right to me, especially given that like they would figure it out at some point because the way you're coming back is you're some kind of spirit or dream spirit. Like we're messing around with what's real and what's not in ways that like we can't really talk about yet in the episodes. So yes, that would make sense once, like, oh, we put somebody in a coffin, but the coffin's not there anymore and they just came back. But the first time somebody came back, they wouldn't just try to put them in a coffin again and chain the door and then just keep doing it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's worth thinking about, but I don't know if I necessarily buy it.
Yeah. I mean, that is a cool thing to happen once and have a story in your head about.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
like,
It's a cool idea for sure.
yeah. But to account for the coffins that we see at the scale, we had a couple people who wrote in with a version of this idea. I'm just picking Gerald because he got in first through the contact form. Just a thought: the chained coffins look nicer than the unchained ones. The unchained melodies.
Yes. Yeah.
My thought would be that those are the wealthier Yharnamites who don't want the bodies of their loved ones to be torn apart or savaged by beasts. And also the other thing there is grave robbers and stuff, like as a way to keep people out.
Yeah, which I like better.
Yeah.
Like that makes like
that accounts for the scale a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like that is a more reasonable explanation. I still like that, even if it wasn't intentional, like everyone can come up with their own read. I do like the idea of From kind of fucking with you in it, which was my supposition, but this makes sense in world. I like that explanation. And then what's interesting though, because when to the earlier comment, we said that they always end up being empty. Just the poor coffins are ever destroyable and empty.
Yeah.
The rich ones are not. So maybe they have actually literally had the corpse pulled out of it. And in those houses where people are having a party, they just have like a corpse on a table with straws, like a series of silly straws stringing out of their guts, just drinking them up.
You're describing a scene from a Queens of the Stone Age song. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Also, just and for people who are new to this, when you do have responses or corrections or anything like that, don't be hurt if we don't necessarily buy it or anything like that. Like one of the big things with Bloodborne is for me, or with any of these Souls games, is that like it's an evolving sense of truth. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but know that I go into responding to these things at least with a plasticine mind.
Yeah,
that my understandings will change as we cover the show for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to have my mind changed. Like,
yes.
Yeah, and like we're all kind of walking around with this tenuous half mix of headcanon and stuff we kind of think we remember reading. Sometimes, you know, like that is only partially like laid down or solidified by actually reading the text or experiencing it, right? Yep. So
let's move on to responses. Tyler says via contact, the coffin business is booming in Central Yharnam. It's just too bad there's nothing but stone for miles around. With how quickly the recent plague cut through, it's no wonder morticians can barely keep up with the demand. It seems that this one was bad enough and went on long enough that the word got around. The hunters began their journey to Blood Mecca after catching wind that beasts were about. By the time you arrive, the hunt is in full swing. Hell, the locals seem to have joined you. Blood being the hot shit in Yharnam, the locals began requesting some added assurance from the morticians that their beloved were kept intact and not desiccated by the next wandering top hat looking for his next fix. The locks aren't for keeping the dead in so much as for keeping the living out. Juicy, itchy, tasty. Not quite a clearance sale at the Astrolabe store, but as a representative of Big Coffin, I can assure you that our wares are the finest materials a man can buy. As long as you can pay up. Only the freshest payments, please.
Big Coffin hunters.
Yeah. The Astrolabe store, which is for new people, that is referring to us making fun of the Duke's Archives.
Yes.
And being constant. Like, we talked about this in the episode, but like, Bloodborne does its cut and paste level design like 1,000 times better than previous Souls games do. Like, that's always been a thing. It's something that like Souls games have great environments and there is a lot of detail there, but among that there's tons of chaff.
Yeah.
And here the chaff just looks better.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Blood and Hot Shit is my favorite Primus B-side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was some cool fiction, Tyler. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Jeremy Greer writes in via Facebook saying, I knew from the moment I opened the first gate that led back to the lamp that I was in for a treat. Then later, finding the second shortcut leading back to the same lamp, I was in heaven. This is what I had been missing from Dark Souls 2, a game which I liked but has its flaws, as has been discussed quite a bit. The shortcuts, the twisty paths, the feeling of holy crap when you figure out where you are. Central Yharnam is the place where I fell in love with Bloodborne, and it's a feeling that stayed with me the entire game. Finding the cleric beast was a whole new experience, and as shallow as it sounds, it made me realize I was playing an actual, by God, next-generation console game. The animation on this dude, I'm telling you, taking him down felt just as good as taking down the Taurus demon in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. just a couple things that makes me think. Like one, I've come around on that first shortcut because for the longest time I felt like a lot of people talk about that first shortcut that goes back to the first lamp, and I said it in the episode, but I was just like, it's a bad shortcut. You'll like never use it.
Yeah,
you like it is a shitty shortcut. But the more I think about it, the way I've come around on it is that it is again, like similar to how I think of the chained coffins, the developer talking to you.
Yeah, well,
like it's not meant to be useful. It's meant to tell you something.
I said
about
that in
how
the
game's
episode.
Gonna be.
Yeah.
It is there to and that's what I mean. Like I came around on it.
Oh, okay.
Because we talked, but initially I was feeling shitty about it. It is the developer letting you know this is how it's going to be, even if this specific instance of it is kind of crap.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, like even if it's not useful, just letting you know that this is a thing and a possibility makes you instantly attuned and sensitized to looking for more fruitful ones in the future. Yeah. Right. Like now that you know this is a part of the game's vocabulary and the way it's going to communicate to you with space and the way this stuff fits together, all of a sudden you're interpreting the world in a different way.
Yeah. Yep. And then about the cleric beast, like I do like how that looks. I think that some of the monsters do with like just so many strips of flesh hanging from them.
Yeah, the materials. Yeah.
Some of the materials get a little busier than I like. Mm-hmm. Like I do like it, but I wish that there weren't so many bosses that had that going on, because they had like Parl and Amelia and Bloodstarved Beast and Cleric Beast and Amygdala and like all of these things, which hopefully you don't just think of boss names as spoilers. Like those things don't mean anything, but there's so many of them that are just like a lot of excess material that it kind of bums me. I mean, I guess not Amygdala, but like it kind of bums you out a little bit. Like I get what you're saying. Like I dig it and it moves really wonderfully. But like I couldn't draw one of these things. Like I couldn't I have a hard time picturing one.
It definitely complicates play, right? Because a lot of these fights and a lot of the gameplay is reading silhouette in order to understand which attack animation is coming up. Yeah. And when you have this stuff that's kind of like appended onto the main body of the boss, it actually makes it hard to see those minute changes because you have a bunch of even smaller, it makes it harder to see the big changes in the way they're moving because you have these minute things that are happening all at once. Again, it adds a little bit of noise that is impressive, on the face of it, but when you actually have to be like right up next to it, it ends up kind of diminishing from the actual play.
Yeah, it impacts the play for me, and it also impacts some of the aesthetic design. Like I think this game has wonderful aesthetics, but I'm on the record of feeling a little bit lukewarm on a lot of the bosses. And my favorite bosses, and we'll get to them throughout the season, I think are probably not going to match up with everybody's favorite bosses because they do tend to be a little bit more restrained, especially in this respect.
Yeah.
But that's just that's an aesthetic thing. It's not objective by any means. It's just kind of how I think about it. So it is very impressive though. I agree that it's technically impressive.
Yeah. Again, you're looking for any of those things that kind of justify the jump in technology or make a good use of it. But it is possible to go too far in saying, oh, we have a DS now, so everything needs to use the touchscreen, right?
Exactly.
Like any new console generation is going to run into that.
That is going to be such a nightmare when like Oculus stuff happens. Like it is going to, like once that gets out of indie hands, it is going to be a nightmare for years. Robin Gilmore says via Facebook, Central Yharnam was a revelation. The Gothic detail was exquisite. Miyazaki apparently spent time in Eastern Europe, and boy, it shows. This is a hell-ridden nightmare version of Prague, Budapest, and Bratislava, all rolled into one. This signposts that we are in for an intoxicatingly nightmarish mix of Victorian horror, born of half-whispered, despicable Balkan folktales intermixed with Eastern Orthodox Christianity, decadently spiritual and horrifically profane all at the same time. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's very well put.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's poetic.
And now all of a sudden, like all of those touchstones, I need to do research into them because I know that like a bunch of werewolf stuff is actually informed by Balkan folktales. So now all of a sudden I need to experience as much of that. So thank you for kind of giving us that Rosetta Stone, Robin.
Yeah, thanks, Robin.
Yeah. Sean Wagner writes in via Facebook saying, Central Yharnam is as close to seeing a slice of life for the average citizen as we get in Bloodborne, and perhaps the entire series. Those who remain sane do what I would do if I lived in a monster town, turn my home into a bunker. It is a real credit to From that my favorite character, Gilbert, is essentially a window that talks to you. Like a Pee Wee Herman character.
Like Blue's Clues or something.
He is an engaging character nonetheless and surprisingly forgiving. as the Central Yharnam lamp seemed to be the place where I would go to when I was stepping away from the game for a moment, inevitably firing off a bullet toward Gilbert as I set my controller down. I think the Cleric Beast is one of the toughest opening bosses in the series. The parallels to the Taurus Demon also do not go unnoticed. The arena is a raised corridor with a wonderful vista that is interrupted by a hairy beast leaping out from behind a building to wreck your day. In my current playthrough, I am saving Cleric Beast for a later time to enjoy the fight with a different backdrop, although I won't say more than that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it a lot during the episode about the fight. One of the things that's interesting about the Cleric Beast, and we talked about it a little bit, but I went back after we talked about it and played the very beginning of Dark Souls 1 again to fight the Taurus Demon again. And he is significantly harder. Like, he has a lot more HP and you do a lot less damage.
Yeah.
You know, like, even with a shitty weapon in Dark Souls 1, you can kind of chunk the Taurus Demon fairly quickly.
Yeah.
The Cleric Beast, and when I've replayed it for the show and then replayed it since then, because I'm trying to build up a good character for Chalice Dungeons.
Yeah.
It's a long fight, regardless of which.
Yeah.
Which makes sense and it's optional, but.
Yeah, and you know, it stands to reason you're a little bit more resourced, or you possibly can. Your total number of heals is 20 as opposed to the 5 that you're likely to have for the Taurus Demon. But even still, like the fact that they've kind of changed the scale of it does make it harder to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Taurus Demon, you have like tricks, you have ways to cheese it, right? You can use the lightning resin, or you can drop down from the tower. Like there are ways you can go about it. Whereas the Cleric Beast, you're pretty much just right there in the fray the whole time.
Yeah, you can shoot him in the face, but he's resistant to that trick.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really all you got. Lobos is doing, I don't know how complete it is, doing a gun only run of Bloodborne, and it's really wild and better him than me, because you do so little damage for so long. And it just goes to make me feel like I just don't know how viable a blood tinge build is in this game. And watching him try to fight the Cleric Beast just forever, like trying to get him to get stun locked, because when a enemy gets parried or whatever, like a boss enemy gets stunned for a second, they'll take double damage from the next attack no matter what.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a riposte. So he was relying on that to do his damage. Just watching him just spend forever trying to get Cleric Beast to grab its face. It was just, it's kind of excruciating a little bit. It's good, and he'll pull it off because he's great. But it is, again, better him than me.
Yeah.
Allison Baker says via contact, and we love Allison. Allison did helped us out. She did the trailer for the most recent Watch Out for Fireballs, and does a very good website, legodarksouls.tumblr.com. And she is the best. And she says, my love affair with Bloodborne started during the alpha test several months before its release. It included the areas of Central Yharnam, up to and including the Cleric Beast. The testing period only lasted 3 hours, which meant, as a sword and board Dark Souls player, I had precious little time to learn the faster, shieldless mechanics of Bloodborne. Shamefully, I was never able to defeat the boss, but I sure had a great time trying. Unfortunately for me, though, this meant that upon release, there was little new to this area for me to discover. Despite that, it was fun for me to try and spot all the changes I could. The biggest of these was that the alpha took place during the dead of night instead of early evening, as in the final release. Another interesting touch was that in the alpha, Father Gascoigne was patrolling the main bridge area to help you take out the 2 Scourge Beasts. There was a third major difference, but it would end up getting into spoiler territory to discuss it too much, so I will save it for a future episode. I'm not sure if the difficulty was tweaked or if I just got better at the game, but I was able to take revenge on the Cleric Beast with little trouble this time around. Maybe giving up that shield won't be so tough after all. Yeah.
Yep. It's weird. I've heard, Cleric Beast is one of those bosses that it's either you ace it on the first try, or it ends up being one of the hardest bosses in the game for you. Is the response that I've seen. So I wouldn't be surprised if over the course of that time it did kind of, if nothing changed except your approach to it.
Yeah. And I definitely I relate to this because I had a very hard time with this boss as well. Like it's definitely in the top half of difficult bosses for me. Even though I've been able to go back to it and do well the first time, just getting used to fighting a boss with the new mechanics that was very tricky.
I aced it the first time and I had trouble the second time. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is. I've had that experience in general. Like bosses, I did find the first build when I went through on my arcane build. And it makes sense. I have a different build, but they're just excruciating. Like just so hard.
Yeah.
you bring up Father Gascoigne, which I think we mentioned that you can summon him.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. I want to try that. So I did that, and I want to talk about it next episode when we talk about him as a character.
Okay.
Because it's interesting. It ends up actually kind of playing into how he works, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth doing. So if you haven't summoned Father Gascoigne, I think it's worth it for the experience.
Yeah.
For this guy. Allison also wrote in on our Facebook page, and she said she was going to send it in and didn't, but I'm going to include it just because I want to. In the basement of the house that we go into, in the episode with the old man in the wheelchair, she pointed out in this song we'd missed that the item he's guarding is a pungent blood vial, and it works on you. Like you go to get it, and he shoots you in the back, which is what you do to other characters.
That's really great,
and that's brilliant. It's an awesome catch, which we did not get. So super cool,
wonderful.
Kiri.
Via contact writes in, I believe the two scourge beasts on the bridge are there to intimidate the player into finding one of the many alternate paths through the area. The Souls games have always been good at that, creating enemies that seem intimidating even before you fight them. The Black Knights with their backs turned is such a strong image, but in this case I think it fails because you already fought an identically looking werewolf who was a pushover. It's easy to think that you're meant to fight those two, when in fact I suspect that the intent is the opposite. In my mind, this is one of the few flaws in the opening area.
That is a really good point. Because I thought they were mandatory because I was going towards that bridge, and the idea of the first boss you could run into being optional, like, just didn't enter into my head.
Right.
Like the fact that there are so many optional bosses in this game, like I didn't realize at the time. But you don't have to fight those guys now. There's actually another shortcut past them entirely that we missed, which goes down to the kennels, which is an area we're going to talk to you about next. And someone called that out on Facebook as well. And to my, I guess embarrassment, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, it's there. I caught it on this current playthrough making the notes. It's so close to where the other shortcut takes you. They're like 10 yards from each other.
It is another one of those shortcuts that is mildly disappointing. But my point is just like, before you even see these guys, you can definitely go a different way.
Yeah.
So maybe if I try to, if I restart my new character I'm going to do for Chalice Dungeons again, maybe I'll try to save bosses, like just move through areas for a while and gain some strength and see how long I can put off fighting these guys. Might be kind of fun just to kind of stomp, just Kirk Hammer this for this guy to death.
Huh. Well, you can't get the Kirk Hammer without killing him.
Oh, you're right. Well, maybe I won't then. The Kirk Hammer is pretty sweet. Yeah. That's the weapon I've been using on this playthrough. Thank you, Kyrie. Jay says via contact, it's clear that Central Yharnam is meant to be just as difficult a starting area as Undead Burg and the Forest of Fallen Giants. All three are saturated with enemies, often in packs, with the aim of teaching you the valuable lesson of crowd control as well as crowd avoidance. If you are a From veteran, then you will more than likely do a little speed running to bypass through areas or enemies so you can explore more of the area and find the most valuable of all things in Bloodborne, shortcuts. Shortcuts are what bonfires were in Dark Souls 1 and 2. The shot of adrenaline you experienced in the Souls games when finding a bonfire has now been replaced with unearthing shortcuts. When you come to the realization that the two wolves on the bridge can be bypassed entirely en route to the cleric beast, you get a very pleasurable feeling in your pants.
Like when you put them on fresh out of the dryer?
I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, that must be what he's referring to.
Yeah. A nice set of flannel jammies.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, I'm about ready to get into my jammies. It's about bedtime. It's going to be so good.
I love jammies.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, there's always been shortcuts. There are fewer of them in Dark Souls 2, but even Dark Souls 2 in the Forest of Fallen Giants, that's one of the most shortcut-rich areas in that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of... I was thinking about something when I was doing this replay, Cole, and this is only kind of related. I want them to patch in warping between bonfires in Bloodborne.
Oh, me too.
Like, I hate that.
Yeah, I hate that you have to dip back to the Hunter's Dream.
I know we talked about it, but I don't think I don't know if at the episode I said I hate it because I do. I hate it.
It's wrapped in and it's tangled up with the load times being what they are.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I feel about that like I do about I feel similarly to how people express frustration with needing to return to the Emerald Herald to level up.
Yeah.
Right. I felt like that was a little bit like a little bit of a trumped up concern. Yeah, it's a bummer, but like hot off the heels of Demon Souls, it was just like, oh, this is going to be like Demon Souls. Whereas, this definitely gets in the way. You have that, which is not ideal, coupled with also basic traversal. Your fast travel is not fast at all, which is really bad.
Yeah, it's slow travel. And when I've been trying on this playthrough that I'm doing for the show where I'm trying to literally talk to everybody, making these NPC like, oh, I want to see if this NPC says anything different now that I've done this, have become real nightmares.
Yeah.
Because I can't zip around, remotely quickly.
Yeah.
You gotta check them out. So like, man, do I want them to patch that in. Like they did that load time patch and it adds the item descriptions to load times, which is great, and mildly reduce the load times. But I really want to be able to work between bonfires.
Yeah.
Really badly.
Yep, it's definitely not ideal.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at this here. Luke wrote in via contact saying, Central Yharnam was my Vietnam. Well, okay, maybe not, but it sure felt like it. For a waste of skin with a threaded cane, those first few streets were a scary place that ran slick with my blood before I acclimatized to the new combat system. None of the other Souls games have so swiftly thrown you into situations as chaotic and dangerous as these. Speaking of, perhaps the better offensively reductive combat comparison would be to say that Yharnam was my Nicaragua, the third in a series of hopeless slogs with little to no objective. I'm a fellow Dark Souls 2 defender, but there was something about the design of this stage that brought to mind the other Souls games in a way that one didn't, that one being Dark Souls 2, until the DLC. Central Yharnam is labyrinthine. There are an endless number of streets, alleyways, stairways, and nooks to explore, and you start to wonder, is this a level or the whole game? Right up until you crest the wave of challenge to find out, oh, it's really just this one pretty simple path that you can run through in seconds. In other words, it is perfect. Having just now replayed this section, I already feel a little bit of nostalgia for the simple days of Central Yharnam, and as much as I love what is to come, I do feel like there is potential in this setting for so much more gameplay. It would have been padding, but I could have happily played a whole lot more, maybe even a whole game in this milieu, and feel like maybe from missed a beat by skipping so many beats with the beast and the church in favor of the creepy stuff to come. The night is long, but I wish the dusk of Central Yharnam were a little longer.
Well said. Like, I don't think I agree with that last point, but it's well reasoned.
Yeah.
I had a very opposite experience. Like we talked about that a little bit, where it felt like the lack of variety in environments was a little bit, stifling.
Yeah,
I was ecstatic when it opened up.
Yeah, I was definitely starving for some kind of novelty around it, even though they're, like compare Central Yharnam to Old Yharnam. Like they are very different and they have different conceits. There is novelty and variety there, like in what they're asking you to do. But, presentation and theme do kind of matter a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then when you get into the cathedral ward and all the kind of paths that go off from that, like you do spend a lot of time in this city.
Yeah.
Like even if I was ready for it to be done, but even if I really liked it, it would be hard for me to feel like I didn't get enough time here.
Yeah.
Specifically Central Yharnam, sure, but it is pretty, like there are areas of the cathedral ward that like you fight some different enemies, but feel very similar to me.
Yeah.
Or feel of a piece. Steven says, by contact. This was such a strong first area, not only in gameplay, but in aesthetic as well. The cobblestone streets, the spires of Gothic architecture against the setting sun, and the lonely sounds of my footsteps, followed by the angered and horrified screams of the local Yharnamites, all came together in an incredibly striking initial experience. So much so that my girlfriend's two sons, aged 7 and 9, also couldn't take their eyes away from the screen, as they watched and a slew of questions were launched at me in their undying curiosity of what was being presented to them. It warmed my heart knowing that they were seeing something they didn't understand entirely, but wanted more of, in the same way I had when I had been their age and saw my brother playing the original Silent Hill or Final Fantasy VII. I figured you'd appreciate the fact that there are two Souls fans in the making right now. Aw.
Yeah.
What's the earliest age you could have handled a Dark Souls game, Cole?
It's probably earlier than you would think or would sound reasonable. Like maybe, like let's say 10 or 12.
Huh.
Like if it was the thing, I was, like if we're talking about the themes, I probably wouldn't have appreciated the nods to Lovecraft and such. Or, like the violence. I was playing, Resident Evil games at that time. I wasn't, that put off by anything that was like that scary at that time, So like those challenges aside, I think that little kid patience probably would have come up.
Yeah.
Like that accounts for a lot, I think. So it would probably be like early teens at the latest.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I could see that. I could also see I would have the patience, but maybe rejecting a thing, like not thinking it was good in spite of the fact that I was getting like my frustration, my ability to deal with frustration. The thing about little kid patience is like, I never got frustrated. I just like was patient with the thing. Whereas here it's like, I could see wanting, I don't know, to be attaboyed a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it also, I hate to be like a kids these days or whatever, but like what I said assumed that you took this game and took it back to me in, 1997 when I was 10 years old, as opposed to the more reasonable version of this, which is if I was 10 years old today, would I be into this or not? I would probably be playing games on my iPhone and posting to Tumblr, Grandpa.
Yeah, like what would happen is some BuzzFeed person would give you a Game Boy, and you'd be like, "Whoa!" and then like make a bunch of outsized reactions.
Yeah,
and become a clickbait boy. I'm just a clickbait boy.
Doctors hate me.
No.
Yep. Let's see here. Yeah. But I think that it probably is younger. Although, that patience thing does become an issue, doesn't it? Go ahead.
Oh, I thought this was you.
Oh yeah. I believe that's me then. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Emily writes in via contact saying, while I was disappointed that Bloodborne offered less storytelling through item locations than previous Souls titles, I think that the environmental storytelling is at its peak form in this game. Central Yharnam had some great examples, from city dweller dialogue to the discarded luggage of botched escapes to proliferance of worshipping or suffering statues, to the cases upon cases of mass-distributed blood bottles littering the streets. These signs tell a story that can be experienced rather than simply read. I got a sense of what state the city was in, what its inhabitants feared and longed for, and I was left with the disquieting impression that something twisted was exerting its influence behind the scenes. I found this to be far more affecting than simply listening to backstory exposition, and all this setup paid off in a major way as I progressed through the game and learned more about the forces at work in Yharnam.
Yeah, I think it does a good job at that as well. Like, when I've bemoaned the lack of item location storytelling, it's those two things working in concert. Over, like, I found this thing here. Here's what the thing is. I like it best when they work together.
Yeah,
is my point. And this one, like, this game eschews one of them almost entirely. Which I felt was too far. I do think it does that really well, though. Like, I do feel like and part of maybe me being slightly less impressed with it is because, and this goes back into the point we were talking about a couple of entries ago, of how long you spend in this area.
Yeah.
So we're eventually like, it's just like, oh, here's another just pile of statues. Like, okay, like I get it. Like there's just piles of statues.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Well, here's the thing. All this stuff, the arrangement of a couple of props in a given area tells a story about that area and probably the ones that are connected to it. The items, being found there, like, yes, show, don't tell, but that telling, that's attached there, that actually allows that story to be connected to a bunch of different places throughout the world, whether that's an item that alludes to a kingdom that's, like nearby and tells you about their values and informs any other items that you find from that kingdom in other places. I think that having those item descriptions and stuff, which I know we're not, like we're on the same page about bemoaning them. I think that is part of the value that brings is those wide reaching connections, of that like substrata of lore, right? You're
absolutely right. Like, having more of that means that you can allude to places that are further away, both geographically and chronologically. And this game, it's not like the game doesn't do it at all. It just does less of it.
Yeah.
But that's a big reason why. So if Emily's saying that this functions the best the Souls game have done as a snapshot of an area, I think I'd probably agree with that.
Yeah.
But I want it all, baby.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you baby.
No.
I want it all, baby. I was calling Cole baby.
Yeah. No, you show and tell, right? Like they deploy them in the appropriate context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And finally, a little section we like to call Just Funnin'.
Are you okay? Are you?
Me and Cole are going to jump off a bridge holding hands.
We only did that once, but now that's the subtext for any Just Funning.
Yeah, exactly. There have been a couple episodes of Just Funnin' that have been pretty sad. But this is actually funnin'. We should call like Just Funnin' like the Tear Zone or something like that. So entering into the Tear Zone. Mark says via contact. Has anyone else floated the idea that the world of Bloodborne isn't so much informed by Victorian England as it is by Georgian England? The late 1700s, think colonial America times, and almost a century before Queen Victoria. There are several supporting points for this, some pretty obvious, others more wishy-washy and open to interpretation. 1. The tricorner hat, as seen as the primary hunter set, was a menswear staple in the late 18th century, but already fading out of fashion by the early 1800s. By the early Victorian era, wearing a tricorner hat would be sort of like wearing a fedora today. Oh, wait. Many of the clothes the NPCs wear are more reflective of the late 1700s, early 1800s style, especially the women. Ariana and Annalise in particular wear flowing, unstructured gowns with open necklines and hair hanging free, all of which would have been scandalous for prudish Victorian norms. Of course, these are two women who very clearly live outside the norms of Yarmanite society. Right. Yharnam seems to have conspicuous lack of industry, which would have been a hallmark of a Victorian-era big city. There's no smog, no smokestacks, and a lot of stuff seems to have been handcrafted. The fact that much of the gear emphasizes the work of specialized masters, i.e. the workshop, or e.g. the workshop, producing one-of-a-kind mechanisms reflecting the small-scale, craftsman-driven nature of finished goods in the 1700s. Think of the apprenticeship system in Johnny Tremaine, or Johnny Deformed.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. The blunderbuss would have been extremely out of date by the 1830s since by that time, the concept of a modern shotgun had already been developed. Same goes for a single-shot flintlock pistol, which were quickly being outmoded by revolver pistols.
This is fucking great, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know one's floated by just because I don't know anything about history.
Yeah. No, but this this all makes sense, and I love it that it raises the conversation beyond this is just another Victorian thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
even though, like, I agree. I also think I think this is great too. I'm not meaning to disparage that. Like, the interest that I have in exactly what period of time Bloodborne is based on is limited. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. And my thesis for the game right now is that it doesn't actually matter to the game either.
Yeah.
Is that it's all part of this bait and switch thing. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting, and you're probably right. Yeah. Like, this is well researched and sounds very plausible and good to me. Mm-hmm. It's just a really, really good point about something that isn't that important to me in the world of the game. Mm-hmm.
It's only important to me because I am petty and small, and I don't want this to be steampunk.
Yeah, I guess that's true too.
Yeah. So yeah, I said it, but I don't. Just Victorian is a little bit overdone, and I like the idea of this pulling these kind of subtle touch points, and it's a little bit sad that just we're kind of snapping to grid on this, and that anything that evokes something of like, okay, it's England after the Renaissance, but before modern era, so it must be Victorian and therefore steampunk. Put a cog on it.
There's all, I mean, that you're right. Like, it is, we are snapping to grid. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there are a lot of things that don't fit in with this early time. Like, were there Gatling guns, in like the 1700s? Like, I feel like there are also functions that probably are like, the actual truth of the matter is it's an amalgamation of that time period.
That is whatever looked coolest. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we're snapping to grid is because that Victorian times are the time that are most frequently, name checked and influenced mm-hmm. and come out of that time. Yeah. So like it's neither, mm-hmm. it's based on neither. It has probably more elements of the 1700s than we think, mm-hmm. which I think is what Mark is saying. And that's valuable. But also, like, at a certain point, if it looks like steampunk and sounds like steampunk, like mm-hmm. it kind of is. Yeah. Like it may as well be, like, I don't know. Like, the popular consensus of what Victorian times is also important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna make a mint publishing Pride, Prejudice, and Parle the Bloodstarved Beast, or whatever. Parle the Pride, Prejudice, and Parle. Yep.
Yeah. Parle and Prejudice. I don't think so. I'll never marry you with that attitude, Paul.
Oh, behave. Also, Austin Powers shows up.
I
We're
like
playing
the
it
idea.
fast and loose.
Harlem Prejudice is pretty good. That's a good t-shirt. That should go in the. I don't know if anyone else will like it. I like it.
Let us know.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, so thanks everybody. Thanks for coming out in force. If you have things to say about the second half of Central Yharnam, so this is everything else, that weird dry dock, the sewer, everything leading up to Father Gascoigne, let us know at Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Or participate in the conversation at facebook.com/bonfiresidechat.
Yes. Yep. All options are available to you. And as far as things you can do to help the show, if you want to support us financially, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated.
Yeah.
And feedback is also always appreciated. If we got anything wrong, any of these things, definitely let us know. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
And enjoy some brief deleted scenes.
Umbasa.
Umbasa. And we're still going to slip in Umbasas because we can't not. We say that and watch out for fireballs. I'm always saying it to my girlfriend, bringing it up in class. Like, it is hard not to say Umbasa when she starts saying Umbasa.
In class?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm not. That would be, I would become everything I hate. Like no. Just real quick, and this can be appendix of material. I'm taking that geography of, I'm taking a class for people listening that's geography in video games. And it is being in a class with 20 or 25 gamers, which in some ways is cool. And in other ways is kind of intolerable. And if I were just as, pop in, dropping in bosses, which that sounds like a rap, like just pop in, dropping in bosses on the top of my esophagus, this metropolis.
That was a pretty good freestyle.
It was only half mine. It was half a hip hoppopotamus from from Flight of the Conchords. But yeah, if I were to start doing that's the kind of thing that gets obnoxious in that class.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The catchphrases. How many times have you been told that the cake is a lie?
Once.
Oh God.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but someone just straight up said it. So it actually is a lie.
Yeah.
Did
you flip a table?
Yeah. No, I go into it's a real Fight Club moment for me. Like when he's getting the acid poured on his hand, he tries to go into that cave with the penguin. Yeah. That's what I have to do in that class a lot of the time.
And lest anybody think, hey, these hypocrites, they spend so much time talking about games. We do it in the comfort of our own homes.
It's a venue thing. Like it is, the teacher is trying to talk about an academic subject.
Right.
And having someone slide in memes in order to get their little corner to chortle is just kind of gross. It feels disrespectful. And that sounds, I guess I'm officially an old man now that I'm like, don't be disrespectful to the teacher. But I do feel like it's just like, come on, guys. It's just engage with the material in good faith.
So as you can see, a lot of game design is about creating an expectation. And finding ways to play with the way that is either paid out or not paid out, as it were. So would you say that the cake is a lie?
Yeah, well, that's very accurate, except for the fact that the cake is a lie is actually relevant.
Yep.
So it's more like, geographers play a lot with the idea of space and place and the way that things are spaces but are meaningful connections and our impact on things makes things into places.
God, this class sounds amazing, Gary.
Would you say that the cake is a lie? Nope. Not remotely. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's a lot more like that.
Oh.
And when it's not, and there's one specific dude who just says facts about games. Like it's like he's an AI that came with the room or something like that. Like he's just like, we'll be talking about anything and he'll be like, well, actually in Assassin's Creed, Redemption, there's over 70 buildings that you can climb, because the teacher talked about buildings, but the teacher's talking about buildings in one manner. Like it's so like, as I get older, my least favorite thing is like bad faith. Like someone willfully engaging somebody or material in a way that doesn't like approach it on its terms is like my least favorite thing.
Yeah.
that gets so annoying to me. Like, and it's like, you could argue like, oh, I shouldn't stifle their thought, and they are trying to do that, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't trust them.
And you've talked with me about this stuff before, and what tends to really rankle me is that so often it is done to aggrandize oneself.
Yes.
And in a way, and not like in a like the pretentious academic way, like I'm going to say this to sound smart, in kind of a more insidious way, which is to ingratiate yourself to your tribe.
It is definitely for the people around them. Mm-hmm. It's also very defensive and defending video games in a way that is like sad, like the way like, oh, when a bully grows up, they grow up so desperate to, or not a bully, like someone who's picked on, rather, someone who was bullied, grows up and gets some kind of modicum of power or freedom. And they're just going to make whatever they were bullied about their soapbox.
Right.
And that's what this is. It's just like, we're all on the same page. We're in this fucking class. Like it's geography of video games. Like you don't have to convince us that video games are worthwhile. Like we all think that.
Yeah. And I have nothing but sympathy for somebody who has been bullied and has those scars, and everybody has to work that out. But there are some strategies and approaches that are more healthy than others, it seems.
Oh, like, yeah, I was like a 210 pound, 6 foot tall, acne prone kid from like 7th grade to like well into 10th grade. Like I was hella bullied. Like I was, people would hit me in the hallway, like just punch me, for nothing. Just like, that's a big dude. Let's punch him and see, let's rattle his cage and watch him hulk out. Yeah. And like, regardless of the fact that like, oh, you know what? I'm a quiet nerd that enjoys video games and Dungeons and Dragons. Like I have no interest in fighting anyone. Right. And people would just like straight up sock me. Jesus. And like, so it's like, I understand that, but if you're processing it in a way, and again, like the worst thing you can do with that is not to talk about video games in class. It's just annoying, right? Like there are better, like there are worse things you could do. Like you could become a bully yourself, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's obviously true. But I feel like these people just have more processing to do. Yeah. Than that. Like you can do better than to just be on a constant sense of the defensive for your entire life. Like, yeah. I don't know. And I'm not trying to say like there are people who had it way worse than I did. I'm not trying to woe is me about that. I'm just saying like I sympathize and relate to the idea of being bullied. Yeah. However, once you get to college, like nobody, we talked about it on one episode where I was just like, nobody looks at like a 7th grader on the street and is like, what a fucking nerd. Like everybody in the world doesn't care about you because you're in 7th grade, and it's just like there's no such thing as a nerd. You're just like a kid. That's what you are. Like once you get out of school, like that stuff ceases to matter very much. Not to say that there aren't like fringe cases of bullying in college and stuff, because
like hazing and shit.
Yeah, that does happen, but it's I doubt it's happening to these specific people now. It feels as a distinct feeling of a holdover from grade school.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Doing just fine. How are you?
I'm good.
Cool.
I like the nice spectrum of timbres of voice we have here. Because I
was worrying at the start. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to tell you apart, but yeah, we definitely do, don't we?
we voice code it. My boyish timbre, and then like Cole. We think Cole has a deep voice, and then you come along and just deep him out of the water.
Blow out the mic. Yeah. How is the audio, by the way?
It is perfectly fine.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry to get you guys up at 6 a.m. That must be pretty difficult. You sound pretty cheery, though.
It's just myself that has to get up. Cole is actually a bit easterly than I am. Yeah. But I'm doing all right. I didn't have class yesterday or work, so I was able to go to sleep early and prepare. So, and my girlfriend was out of town, so it's just like me in the house alone. I'm like, oh yeah, going to sleep at 9.
Living wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm just doing this instead of working right now. So.
Right. Well, I just finished uploading a video about 10 minutes ago, so it all worked out pretty well.
Oh, good.
That's great.
Yeah. I was scared about...
What is it on?
It's on... A little while ago, I put out a video advertising for people to get through and kill 5 hunters as quickly as possible. I don't know if you guys saw that one. But basically, this is a video showing those submissions. So,
cool.
It's pretty exciting. It's like a little race. It's cool.
Yeah. Have you and is that all complete? Have you decided on a winner? Found like the fastest person and such?
Yes, I have. Someone got it in 11 minutes and 50 seconds, which
Holy
is
shit.
pretty insane. So I suppose I can lend some of that information to the podcast because we're going to be talking about Central Yharnam, and I have all the tips and tricks that I can steal from those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crowdsourced insight.
Yeah, very cool. I'm looking forward to that. I saw that video and it was one of those things where I was like, this is very cool, but I am incapable. Like I don't feel competitive on this level.
I think a lot of people thought that, and as soon as I put it out, I was surprised there weren't that many submissions coming through. I think a lot of people were intimidated because they're like, "Nah, someone else will do amazingly."
Yeah,
and I guess that's kind of true in retrospect, since someone did it in 11 minutes. But
Wow.
yeah, you had a chance.
How deep in the game do you have to go to find 5 hunters?
So you get Eileen, and then you get Gascoigne, and then Alfred, and then there's the Saw Spear Hunter in Old Yharnam, then there's Jura on the top of the tower.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
11 minutes.
11 minutes.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Exciting.
I eagerly await. I'm going to watch that probably right when we're done because I've been ping-ponging on going back to sleep or not. But I also have drank a bunch of coffee, so
Me too.
I will be hyped for that instead.
This is quite a hefty notes page. I just scrolled down and realized how big it is.
Oh,
wow.
We're only the first like 3 big blocks.
Yeah.
Are this episode.
Yep.
We use the same page for
I was
all
getting
of
a
our
little bit
notes.
intimidated there for a second.
We're here.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
We
I haven't even
didn't tell
seen
you
this stuff
that-
in game.
Yeah, you have to clear 27 hours.
Yep.
For we're recording an audiobook. We didn't tell you. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like 6 a.m. It's like, when does this end?
The night never ends.
Cool. Save the references for the podcast.
If you click on the title text BSC Central Yharnam Part 1, it'll take you to just the post that has this week's notes on it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Unless
Great.
you feel like talking about Amnesia with us, which is the game we did for our other show.
Yep.
I can't get further than 10 minminutes in that game, so no thank you.
The night never ends.
Cool. Save the references for the podcast.
If you click on the title text BSC Central Yharnam Part 1, it'll take you to just the post that has this week's notes on it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Unless
Great.
you feel like talking about Amnesia with us, which is the game we did for our other show.
Yep.
I can't get further than 10 minutes in that game, so no thank you. Yeah, no, it was a blast. I almost, at some points, I almost felt like I was just listening to a podcast. And then I realized, wait, I've got to actually talk. I'm actually a part of this, you know? Because I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's so easy to sort of tune out like that. But no, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad, and hopefully we didn't monopolize the conversation too much or talk over you too much or anything like that.
Oh, no, I'm perfectly happy for you guys to do that. You guys are probably very old hat at this point.
Yeah.
I was so happy when I Googled like Dark Souls podcasts so long ago now. And like this community just has so many powerful elements to it. And the fact that there's this like high quality podcast out there as well just really evens it out, you know? And I was just so happy to see that exists. Like we got the PvP side of things. We've got a PvE community. We've got this YouTube community. We've got this Twitch community. We've got a podcast. It's just so awesome that it's so fleshed out like that.
Yeah, it's been really pleasant and kind of revelatory for me as well. Especially, going down to San Francisco. Either meeting people online or going down to San Francisco and meeting, yourself and Dave, and some of the Twitch people in real life. It has been very heartening to kind of have everybody brought together with this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I wonder when we'll have our own convention. Maybe a couple of years down. SoulsCon.
Not soon enough. Like we've talked about it a lot. Wanting that, or just wish list it, not talked about it. Like let's rent out the Hyatt. Like we've talked about it. Like we want that as well.
Yeah.